All right, so the numbers I think are stabilizing a little. We can go ahead and get started. I hope everyone's having a fantastic Thursday so far. And let me just remind you again to please sign in with your name as you join. And I'm really pleased today to introduce this week's speaker, who I've known for a number of years now, Eli Niewood. Eli is currently the Vice President of Air and Space Forces and Cross-Cutting Capabilities at MITRE. Really interesting role where he sets and helps oversee strategy and priorities to ensure that MITRE delivers technical capabilities that meet the Air Force and the Space Force's most critical missions. So Eli's been at MITRE for since 2017. Before that, he was at Lincoln Laboratory, which is where I got to know Eli. You know, while he was at Lincoln Laboratory, he did a number of different things. He was assigned as a technical advisor to the director at the U.S. Air Force's Rapid Capabilities Office, where he really helped set the strategy, the technical strategy and direction of that very important office. He also led the engineering division here at Lincoln Laboratory, and also worked for many years as a systems analyst, also eventually leading some of the Air Force efforts here at Lincoln Laboratory. So really quite a variety of different things. Also during that time, a little bit on the side of his Lincoln work, he served as the chair of the Air Force Scientific Advisory Board, and actually served as a member for many years before serving as the chair. So Eli's done a lot of different things in his career. I know that one of the things he's always advised me is you know, to be willing to take on new opportunities and try them and learn from them. And so I believe his topic today is relevant to that: systems analysis of an engineer's career, things he'd wish he had known. I'm really excited to hear it. Eli,
it's too late for you, Dad.
And then one other comment, I'm sorry. The way Eli wants to take questions, you know, again, as you have questions, please type them into the chat. And then Eli's going to pause a couple times during his talk, and I'll help pull up some of the questions that you've asked. And then at the end, we'll have even more time for question and answer. So Eli, take it away.
Great. Thanks a lot for the introduction, Dan. Thanks to all of you who are on for attending today. You know, as Dan said, I've done a lot of different things during my career. I just recently took on this role as the Vice President of Air and Space Forces at MITRE. And when I told my wife that was happening, she said, you know, you don't seem to have been able to hold a job at MITRE for more than 2 years. You know, what's going on? I told her I thought it was largely a positive thing, but yeah, you'll have to decide that for yourselves. So I'm hoping, you know, by the time that I'm done today, all of you will have learned a little bit about, you know, when I say systems analysis of an engineer's career, what does that mean? I think it means different things to different people, and so I'll try and define that a little bit, what I mean. A little bit about my career and the places that I've worked, a little bit about some of the things I've learned along the way that have made me successful, or sometimes have kept me from being successful. I think that's sort of the most important part of it, is, you know, less what I did and more maybe what you can take from it as you get ready to start your careers. And, you know, BWSI, I think, a great way to get that started. I'm going to organize this somewhat chronologically, but I'm going to jump around a little bit, in part because I've learned some of the same lessons multiple times, and, you know, sometimes it took me more than once to learn them, and that's been sort of interspersed across my career. Dan gave you you know, a little bit of my background, but you know, again, just because I think it's important context, I went to MIT as an undergraduate, studied aeronautics and astronautics there, got my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate there. Straight out of getting my doctorate, I studied space propulsion, went to Lincoln, worked for Bob Shin, you know, really to, you know, almost from the start, on what we call the Air Force Red Team, trying to understand how threats to the Air Force might evolve and how the Air Force might adapt to those. And so, you know, did that systems analysis, you know, really for the first probably almost 10 years of my career, and then got the chance to expand to get involved in field testing and flight testing, worked with Joel quite a bit, you know, in terms of, you know, technology development and prototyping. And then, as Dan mentioned, moved to the engineering division. Lincoln, really hardcore aerospace and mechanical engineering, and then advising, the Air Force on where to go from a technology perspective, and now really leading, the work, a big chunk of the work here at MITRE. So that's been my background. So I want to do it, what have I learned from that I think would be useful to all of you? And I'll go back even further than my time at MIT. So the first lesson I think I gained sort of looking back and analyzing my career is, focus your career on something that you find exciting. And hopefully, the experiences you're having this summer will give you, hopefully you've all found something that's exciting, but maybe you found something that wasn't. That's good information to have too. It's interesting. When someone asks me what I do, I say either I'm an aerospace engineer, or what I really like to say is I am a rocket scientist. And I do have a polo shirt. My wife bought it for me. It has, Marvin the Martian on it, and it says, actually, I am a rocket scientist. My wife bought it for me and makes fun of me every time I wear it. I don't quite get how that works. Like, if you bought it for me, you should want me to wear it, right? But I still think of myself, and I think act like an engineer in many ways. And it colors sort of what I do, and it's what excites me. I love that kind of work. I love solving engineering problems. I love taking the things I learned as an engineer and applying them to a broader set of problems. Part of the reason I studied aerospace engineering in college as an undergraduate, as a graduate, was I signed up to go to a summer program when I was a high school student, very much like all of you, in person at the time, at the University of Southern California. And go do an engineering project for 6-7 weeks, write a report on it, and get out there. And the first day, there's almost like there's a reception with the students and the professors. And this guy with long, crazy, greasy hair, and just the total weird scientist look comes up to me, and he goes, "Are you Eli Niewood? Do you want to study chaos?" And he was so excited, and his fervor and his love of the topic of studying the mathematics of chaotic systems, was incredibly exciting to me. And I adopted some of that fervor, and I could speak about chaos and chaotic equations, not quite with the same level of zeal I think that he brought to it, but it made it incredibly enjoyable. I enjoyed the work. I enjoyed what I was learning. I think people talk all the time, about work-life balance. And you don't want work to be your life, right? You want hobbies and interests and friends outside of work. But I think it's also important that work should be something that gets you up in the beginning of the day and you're excited to take on. I like to think I would like to keep working forever. It won't happen, and other people will get a vote in that. But I love what I do. And I think it's important that you find something that you love to do and do that. I know people who don't have that. And, they do jobs that may pay them a lot of money, but, in the long run, if you're not enjoying it, if it's not something you find exciting and you're passionate about, I think you will have a very different life. And so that is the first of the lessons, I've sort of learned, from my career to date. Second lesson that I want to talk about is I believe that everyone should embrace change. We talked a little bit about the different roles that I have, and when time comes that you need to make a decision about what to do next, what I like to tell people is do the thing that scares you. What is it you're afraid of? And I think that gives you a really good clue about what you might want to take on. I mentioned going out to USC for a summer and doing a project there. So I'm an Orthodox Jew. I keep kosher, which means finding food for me to eat. I can't just go to the restaurant down the street. I can't go to the cafeteria at USC. So when I went out to USC, I'd been away from home, but in summer camp, where all my meals were taken care of, things like that before. Now I was going to have to shop and particularly cook for myself, in a dorm room. So cooking meant that my parents packaged up an old toaster oven for me. And it, went out in the, under the plane, and I get to the dorm, I unpack the toaster oven, go across to the grocery store, buy some, frozen food that I can heat up in there, and toaster oven doesn't work. The graduate student advisor comes in and he takes a look at it, and we unplug it and open it up, and there's a wire that has come loose. And he's like, okay, just take this pocket knife, put this wire in, screw it down, and it'll be good. We do that, plug it back in, doesn't work. What happened? As we put it all back together, the wire came loose again. Unplug it again, do it all again. Go through this process like 4 or 5 times. 5th time, I forget to unplug the toaster oven before I put the wire back in. Sure enough, you're all probably good enough students to know what happens. Touch the pocket knife to the wire, big shock. I drop the pocket knife, whatever, close it back up. Now it works. Why? Because, the shock basically soldered the wire, to the post, and it worked for the rest of the summer. But, look, it was scary to me to go out there knowing no one, not knowing where my food was going to come from the next day. It was a great decision, right? I learned a huge amount. I got to meet this great professor. Project that I did, I submitted to what at the time was called the Westinghouse Science Talent Search. I became a Westinghouse scholar, got to go to Washington with all these other kids, study. It was a great experience. Dan mentioned that I ran the engineering division at Lincoln for a while. So when I was an undergraduate at MIT, junior year, you had to do a project, a real hands-on build something project. And the first thing that they have you do is you go into the machine shop, and they teach you how to use, the lathes and the presses and the bandsaws in the machine shop. And everyone else, they were really excited to have them come do that work for themselves. The two older men who ran the machine shop told me, Ellie, anything you need, we will do it for you. Why? Because they did not want me touching their machines ever again, right? Okay, so here I am at Lincoln. It's time to do something new. I've been doing systems analysis and flight test work. And I go to the director of the lab and I say, I want to go to the engineering division with all the machine shops and the clean rooms and the big tools. Why? Because it was the thing I knew least about at Lincoln, and the thing that, sort of most scared me, could I lead people doing this work, not knowing that I could not do it for myself? And it was an incredible experience. I would say one of the proudest experiences of my life. I think when I look back, will be taking that engineering division and shaping their work, in different directions and putting them on a different path for the future. I went home after having that conversation with the director of Lincoln, thinking to myself, what did I just do? What did I sign up for? I could easily fail at this. Even coming to MITRE, again, mentioned that I joined MITRE about 5.5 years ago after, 22, 23 years at Lincoln Laboratory. MITRE is, 3 or 4 miles from Lincoln. We're both FFRDCs, sort of spawned out of MIT, but still incredibly different given how much similarity there is. And yet, so I was afraid to leave all the people that I knew. I mean, I'd made huge friendships at Lincoln. I knew what I could do. I knew what mattered for success. I've learned so much since being here at MITRE, and I think I've had impact on MITRE because of my background that I otherwise might not have. And so again, I think taking those risks and taking on things that you're uncertain about, I think is a great way to sort of drive your career. Third lesson I'll talk about, and then maybe after that I'll pause for a couple questions, is work on something that matters and that will have impact and be important to people. When I was a graduate student, I went to the International Electric Propulsion Conference in Viareggio, Italy. It was a great trip, right? I'd never been to Italy before. You're on the coast there. I spent the weekend in Florence. I'd never been there before. I had a blast. I'm sitting in one of the meeting rooms. I'm going to present a talk, and I look around the meeting room, and I am 100% confident that there is no one in that room who knows the subject matter or knows the material better than I do. I can answer any question that comes up. I am, maybe not the world's expert, but I am an expert in this field of magnetoplasma dynamic thrusters for spacecraft and numerical modeling of them. I also realize as I look around the room that the 10 people in the room, they are the only ones who care about what I know in this area. No one outside the room is worried about MPD thrusters or is thinking about them at all. That was an important, moment for me to say, hey, it's great to do something you love and it's great to be interested in it, but you got to care, and people have to care about what comes out of it. Again, I think makes a big difference. I am fortunate. I have a now 19-month-old granddaughter. She doesn't, speak much. She speaks a little. She doesn't understand, but one time my wife and I are babysitting for her. She's at our house, but I'm partly working. I have to take a couple meetings during the day. And I'm on a meeting and we're talking about, nuclear command, control, and communications. Essentially, how does the US deter, existential threats to the nation from China, from Russia? How do we make sure that our command and control capability, we will be able to use nuclear weapons in the awful event that we ever have to under incredibly dire circumstances? So that's what we're talking about. My granddaughter, toddles into the room and my wife says, Gwen, don't bother grandpa. He's saving the world from nuclear weapons. And I don't think she got it, right? I don't think she understood yet. I'll tell her again. I'll tell her this story in 10 years. There's something to that, right? I mean, I'm doing something that matters and that will be important to her in the future. And that's a great feeling to have. So I'll just pause briefly there, Dan. I mean, if there are any questions, I could take a couple now, or we can wait till the end as well.
Sure. There's one question, and then I'd encourage folks to add a few more if you have any. Aishwarya Udeshi, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so as someone who is also doing a summer program right now, this one, I wanted to ask what the most important thing you learned or the key idea you took away from that USC summer program was, and how did you manage to make the most of your time there?
Yeah, I would say, let me start with the last part of that. How did I make the most of my time there? I think it was, I'll say, and this is an important idea I didn't include in these lessons, maybe I should have, is, I knew nothing about the topic. I did computer programming, again, modeling these chaotic equations. I'd done a little, computer modeling before, programming, I've learned BASIC before. It was really important to be able to go ask the professor, the graduate student he had me working with, questions whenever I had them. Not to be, don't be afraid to look stupid, right? I don't think I look stupid too much, but they know you don't know this field the way that they do. And so, knowing that I could go to them, that I could ask, whenever I came to a roadblock, I would try and fix it myself. I would try and understand. I would not spend a week trying to solve the problem. I would go to them, when I felt like I put some, decent amount of time and it was beyond me, and get that help. I think that was really important. I think, in terms of, what did I learn, from the work itself, I would say, that interaction between mathematical modeling and physical systems and how those can come together was really interesting. And I think something I've continued to use, throughout my career is, you don't want to just do modeling. You don't want to just be out in the field with an experiment. You want to bring those together. And I think that very early experience was part of learning that. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
All right,
Great.
thanks, Ellie. There are a few more questions, and I'm going to take them actually in the reverse of how they came in, so that they're a little bit more chronological for you. Manya Dua, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So for me especially, I think sometimes it's, I say yeah, computer science is great, I like doing this, but sometimes I feel iffy, is this what I really want to do? And then I'm like, wait, maybe I do. So I just have a question. As a high schooler, at what point did you for sure knew that I want to do this? And, what was the reasoning behind that for you?
Yeah, my dad, he's passed away now, but was an engineer. And so, I always said I did not want to be an engineer, right? I mean, I admired him, but didn't want to go do that. I'll say when I got out to USC and met that professor, I fell in love with the field of aerospace engineering, and, have been on that path, since that time. But I will say, look, you're not you don't need to decide that early. I mean, maybe I'm lucky in that way, but there are many points at which you can take different directions. And I don't, find something you love now, but recognize it may change, and you want to keep your eyes open to other possibilities as you move throughout your career. But for me, that path certainly to being an engineer, in the aerospace field was really set. That would have been after my junior year of high school.
All right, so continuing on the same theme a little bit, Jaden Lee, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so I guess my question was kind of similar. So you recommended to like work in a career that I guess makes you really excited to like work in like every day. I guess you wake up like really excited, right? I was wondering like what would you recommend if like you're really interested in like multiple different fields? Because I don't really know like what, like maybe to focus on or
Yeah. I will say I have maybe not quite the field level, but I have this problem, like squirrel, like all technical problems excite me, right? And and I can be bad about, it's bad enough when I go off and chase one of these things, but I have all these people who work for me. Sometimes I make them go off and look at this for me, look at that for me. I need to recognize, take some time to do it. And look, I think there are many ways now. I think, the field is, engineering as a whole, much more open to multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary type efforts, right? I think there used to be much firmer boundaries between mechanical engineering and electrical engineering and computer science. Those have, broken down quite a bit. And so I think, one thing to think about is there's both what interests you technically and what interests you from sort of the kinds of problems you want to be solving, right? Do you want to be working on climate change? Do you want to be working on national defense? Do you want to be working on, consumer, and so I think that right away gives you a little bit more capability to mix, what are the technical areas that matter here? I will say though, I think make sure to get a strong foundation, right? I think to some extent easier, later in your career to add something new or to get get a second master's degree or something like that. But don't forget to really build that strong foundation in math in a given field of engineering and use that. So I would think, pick one of those things to get started with, but then keep in mind to expand that out as time goes on. So Dan, maybe let's do one more and then I'll, yeah.
Sure, sounds great. Let's see, David Yang, do you want to just ask your question?
Yeah, hi. So first, I really enjoy your passion for, your subject, your love of learning, your career. It is absolutely a pleasure to listen to you talk. So I guess my question is, what was going on in your mind when you decided to make like that leap to Lincoln Laboratory Engineering when previously your experiences weren't directly related to a different topic like that?
Yeah. So maybe I shouldn't admit this. Here I am, a graduate student, and for whatever reason, I assumed I would go and be a professor when I graduated. I could paper this room. I don't have them anymore with the rejection letters I got as a graduate student applying for academic positions. Many places never answered. Many places sent you a rejection letter. One university sent me back my resume. I'm like, you could shred it. I don't need it back, right? I'm like, I thought that was really obnoxious. Like, you're so bad, we don't even want this. My wife was working in the Boston area already, so we knew we wanted to stay here. And I had a friend who got a job at Lincoln, and I looked at him and I said, if he could get a job there, I could get a job there. And that's how I ended up at Lincoln. So it wasn't like great forethought or planning there. It was a great choice. I'm really happy it worked out the way that it did. But it was really chance, I would say, that led me to Lincoln. All right, good. I'm happy to take some more questions later. Let me go through some of the other lessons that I had, and then we can come back to questions. So lesson number 4, practice doesn't always make perfect. I think again, as an engineer, I think I often have a tendency, let me do it again. Let me do it again. So I started Lincoln. We were just talking about when I started my career there. And we have a briefing in a month. We're going to go down to Washington, my first business travel, and we are going to brief our Air Force sponsor. And for Dan and for Joel, most of you won't know, it was Dave Hamilton. And at the time, we didn't do briefings on the computer, right? It wasn't PowerPoint, it wasn't, Adobe Acrobat. You had charts printed essentially on, plastic, right? And you mount them in these frames and you go down with this stack of like 25 frames with plastic mounted across them. You put them on a light box and it gets projected onto a screen. I practiced that briefing over and over. I mean, and then you pack up the charts and you fly down with them to Washington. And we're in this room with my boss and my boss's boss and this Air Force colonel who pays our bills. First chart goes up on the screen, and I noticed like there's some smudges on it. Looks sort of like my fingerprints. Get to the second chart, you can see my whole hand on the chart. Third chart, almost hard to see some of the material on there. What happened? I practiced and practiced, including practicing after lunch and afternoon chocolate snack. And you could see the evidence of that all over my presentation. I have to say, the Air Force sponsor was incredibly nice about it. Lou Thurman, my boss's boss, again, I'll use the name for those of you who remember him, incredibly nice about it, allayed all my concerns. But, it was, I would say, a relatively, humorous example of sometimes, having something down pat not the right way. We have a big meeting with the Air Force. We're in this stuffy room, no, electronics. And we go through like 5 briefings. The other members of the team and I were all briefing. And I get up and I give my briefing and someone comes up to me and it goes, "That was the best briefing of the day. What did you do that was different?" And I realized I'm grew up outside New York City. I'm the only one who spoke loud enough for the rest of the people in the room to hear. Everyone else was just too quiet. And so my briefing was the best of the day because I have a loud voice. The last example I'll give, I think the one that's most real is I have someone who works for me, really bright guy, knows his field in and out. I've seen him brief different times, and sometimes just not on his game for some reason, and sometimes it's great. And I realize what the difference is, and I've told him, sometimes he gives a speech, and it's terrible. And sometimes he picks someone, he hasn't had the chance to practice, he speaks to someone in the audience, and he's just speaking to them, and it's incredible, right? And so I think there's a balance between being natural and being real and being polished, which you want to try and find in a lot of the things that you do. Another lesson that I've learned, I don't think applies to you yet, but I think will, apply to many of you not too far in the future. It's one my wife taught me, actually. She says, my wife always says, I don't think it's original to her, but people don't leave bad jobs. People leave bad bosses. And I started a new job at Lincoln. Actually, when I went over to the engineering division, someone had told me, "Oh, you don't want to work for so-and-so. He doesn't work that hard. I see him in his office. He's just reading the newspaper." I wasn't my experience with this person, but whatever. Okay, maybe there's something there. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I get in sometimes at 8 o'clock in the morning. He's reading his newspaper." One day, for whatever reason, maybe I was traveling, I had to get to work at 6 a.m. And I got in at 6 a.m. and my boss was there working hard. So what happened? He was there from like 6 to 6 every day. He took a break at 8 o'clock, to catch up on the paper. And it turned out he was an incredible boss. He was someone who, saw it as his mission to empower all of the people below him. And what happened was he had taken over this division shortly before I got there. The division had been led by one guy for like 20 years, and no one thought a lot of the leaders in that division because they had been tamped down by the person they were working for so long. And this guy named Bill Brown comes in and lets people do what they're good at and encourages them to express themselves, and what do they think should happen? It was just, it was incredible how he changed the whole dynamic of what was happening there because he was a great supervisor, a great leader, a great manager, a great supervisor. I read, I'm not that into management books, but someone pointed me to this book, Turn the Ship Around, by a former Navy captain. And if you have a chance to go off and, just do a search on, on Google, you'll find little videos that he did describing his approach to management. He's a Navy captain. He runs a submarine. I think one of the things you think about is sort of the most rigorous, command and control structures that might be out there. And what happens? He's supposed to go take over Submarine X. I don't remember the name of it. And he studies all of the log books and the wiring diagram. He knows Submarine X in and out. He knows all the people who are going to be working for him. Last minute, he gets a message from the Navy. You're not going to Submarine X, you're going to Submarine Y. Doesn't know how it works, doesn't know the people. And so he shows up and he's like, look, I have to trust you. I need to let you do the management because I don't know enough to do it myself. And the book is called Turn the Ship Around because he turned that ship around from being the worst performing submarine in the Navy to the best. And look, that might not be the right management style for you, although I think it's a great, I think the examples he gives are great. But you need to find, who are the people out there you want to work for, who inspire you again, who give you the freedom to grow, who give you support, when you need it. Again, my wife does a lot of consulting, in STEM and in diversity and equity and inclusion. One of the lessons, she works a lot with graduate students and postdocs and graduate schools. And, the example she tells of the horrible PIs, professors out there who know nothing about how to lead a team, who are abusive of their teams, who other graduate students know this, and before they come to their labs know this, but they have a Nobel Prize, so why wouldn't I want to work for them? You don't want to work for those people, right? You need to find, leaders and managers who are good leaders and good managers. And if you don't have that, find a different job, find a different place. I think it's really important as people start their careers. They will, again, there are great people out there. Go off and find them. Another lesson I've learned, again, I mentioned, that I'm an Orthodox Jew. Have beliefs. Doesn't mean to be religious beliefs. It could be any kinds of beliefs. Stick to them and take pride in them. Is something that has been, again, really important to me. I couldn't come to work if I couldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be comfortable at home if I couldn't be who I am. It was, again, relatively early in my career at Lincoln. We got a stack of paper plots from the Air Force of radar cross sections of various aircraft. And I'm the one who figures out how we can scan the plots, sit there at a terminal, trace them point by point to convert them into, data that we can use. You would never do it this way today, I know, but this is what we had to do on sort of the edge between, all paper and computer. So I observed the Sabbath, which means that, Friday nights I need to be home before it gets dark. I'm offline completely, no electronics, no cell phone, no email, from Friday night to Saturday night. And I am so engrossed. We have to get these plots traced and send them back to the sponsor. We've got a deadline to come. And I'm not even watching the clock. I don't realize, it's Friday afternoon. It's 3:30, 4 o'clock, it's winter time, Sabbath starts early. I don't know, but I need to leave. And my boss comes up to me and he goes, Ellie, I think you need to go. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I need to do that. And then I look up, I'm like, oh crap, I need to go. And, great on him for doing that. He would not have known that, if I had not made clear what was important to me and what mattered to me and what my boundaries were. I always never forget, I'm walking out of Lincoln one day, now I'm a group leader, and I'm actually, so I leave, I'm working with someone else who also is Orthodox Jew, we also leave, and someone comes up to us and says, hey, I need to leave early on Fridays, is that okay? And I look at him and he's talking to me and this other Orthodox Jew, I'm like, don't you see us leave every Friday? Of course you could leave early on Friday if you have to. It turns out he's a Seventh-day Adventist, and their Sabbath starts a little bit earlier than the Jewish Sabbath, whatever reason, I don't know why. And so he leaves every Friday, doesn't know that we leave half an hour after him, and he's asking permission from us to go, right? So again, I mean, I think it was great that he asked, right? And important that you show, that these things matter to you. And again, it may not be religious, whatever your beliefs are, you need to stay true to those. I'll say related to that, I think one thing I've learned is, diversity and inclusion and equity, incredibly important, right? I mean, look, these are things that are good in and of themselves, right? You should be committed to DE&I, you should be committed to helping others and making everyone feel, at home, just because it's a good thing. But it also makes a difference to the work. I just finished up a role, helping lead the intelligence community work here at MITRE. Having a bunch of old white men try to understand China just isn't going to work, right? And by bringing that diversity, what are all the possibilities of what they might be thinking? You're just going to be a lot better at that if you bring a diverse set of people against that. I mean, there are plenty of studies out there, right? The work is better. Diverse groups do better work. And so it's better for what we do as well. And recognize that you can help. Again, I gave this example with the Seventh-day Adventists. I'm on a panel at Lincoln, actually, a diversity, we have a diversity day, and I'm on a panel discussing this. And, someone says, oh, I think actually I said, I'm not quite sure why I'm on this panel, I'm white and male. And someone says, but Ellie, you wear a yarmulke, keep it at work every day. I think of you as, being part of our diversity. I realize, everything you do, you have some impact here. Also, we all have biases, right? And recognize that, right? I can't help how I see certain people. What I can help is recognizing that I do that and doing my best to account for that and respond to it. The last lesson that I'll give, and then I think I'd like to stop and leave time for questions. And actually, I was talking with Dan before about being at Lincoln this week, and I'll give an example from that is, and again, I think something more important, maybe a little bit later in your careers, enabling others is, way more rewarding than doing things for yourself. As a manager or as a leader, it takes a little time to realize, there are things you can do faster than the people who are working for you, but 10 of them will do it a lot faster than you can. And helping them do it a little bit better is so much more impactful than doing it for yourself. So there still is, there's a conference that I ran for a while at Lincoln called the Air Vehicle Survivability Workshop. Used to be my job, I would give a briefing there. If I got to give 2 briefings there during the 3-day conference, I was like, oh, I must be doing good. Then, I move up the chain a little bit. I'm sitting there watching 20 people give briefings that I helped shape. And that was an incredible feeling, right? I mean, just incredibly satisfying to know that they were all a little better at that because of me. So I was back there this week for a different conference, but and I'm looking around, and I didn't help make any of those briefings today, but probably half the people who helped other people make those briefings, I had helped hire, train, mentor, whatever. So we're now like 2nd generation or 3rd generation. And so again, I don't even work at Lincoln anymore, but that was still, I mean, just great I was so proud of those people. And I was like, if I did a little bit to help this, good on me. So those are my lessons. I hope, when Bob Shin first asked me to do this last year, I was like, Bob, I don't have anything, I don't do real engineering anymore. I don't have some piece of tech I can explain to you. But I'm hoping that actually, teaching you, how to take this kind of approach and think about things this way, and some of these lessons, maybe actually, hopefully will be just as impactful for you and help you as much, just thinking about your careers and trying to break them down, understand where you want to go, maybe even better than, teaching you about how some radar works or how some specific sensor works. So with that, Dan, happy to take more questions if they're there. Yeah, whatever, whatever else people would like to, other topics people want me to discuss, happy to do that.
All right, great. So let's see. Let's start with Datri Parakal. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so I had a question about just when you are interested in like multiple different fields, how often in the real world or like just like in the workplace in general, do you actually get a chance to work on every single aspect of like a research project or like a product development process, or does it tend to be like segmentized, like one person works on, you know, the hardware, one person works on the software, something like that?
Yeah, so I think, early in your career, you're probably going to see a little bit more of that segmentation. You're going to be asked to take on some specific aspect of a project and work that. I think it definitely changes over the course of your career. You get more and more responsibility, you get to see more and more of the project. I think some of you will have to move around a little bit to get to see that bigger set of things. One of the things I loved about doing systems analysis at Lincoln, and I think one of the things I loved about aerospace engineering, right? As an aerospace engineer, at least at MIT when I was an undergraduate and a graduate student there, I think this is still true. They really think about it as a systems problem. And so, those funny cartoons, right? And maybe you haven't seen them. Maybe they're just, aerospace engineers see them. The structural engineer thinks about the airplane as like a bunch of beams, right? The aerodynamicist thinks about it as the shape of the airfoil, right? The avionics engineer thinks about it as a bunch of electronics boxes, in something that looks like an airplane. But the reality is, if you're going to design an airplane, you're going to design a satellite, you need to think about all of those things, and they all need to come together. And so I think both systems analysis and aerospace engineering really lend themselves to people needing to understand a range of disciplines and bring those together. And I think the jobs I've gravitated to have been the ones that require that multidisciplinary approach. And I also think that if you can think about the big picture in the context of what you're doing, it will also lead you to those roles that require that kind of thinking. When I interviewed at Lincoln, they asked me to describe my thesis work. And then they asked me, okay, what would people do with this MPD thruster if you ever built it? And I was able to answer that question. And the guy who hired me said, that is why we hired you. Not because you knew how the thruster worked, but because you knew what we would do with it if we had it. And so again, I think, think about as you learn, as you take classes, how do you steer yourself into those projects and roles and disciplines that require that bigger picture point of view. And then I think you can shape your career to where you'll get to work across disciplines like that. Does that help?
Yeah, I actually have a follow-up question. If you were to work in like management, how often do you get a chance to work on projects or work on multiple aspects?
Yeah, so I would say, for much of my career, I've at least managed to do technical management, right? In the sense that even when it stopped being me who was doing the work, I was diving into the work enough to have, comments about it, to be able to give people feedback. I was just meeting a couple days ago where I went out to dinner with some of the folks who I hired when I first got here to MITRE, and one of them said, Ellie, what I remember is when Brian wrote out all these equations on the whiteboard and said he's going to do step A, step B, step C, and then step D, and you said, why don't you just not do A, B, and C and do this instead? And Brian's like, oh, that would be a lot faster. And so, I still, until relatively recently, been able to do that. I would say, look, my role now is such that I get to see across many disciplines. I am doing less and less of it myself. But my ability to understand the different pieces of the work, even now, still vital to what I do. So, definitely your hands-on part of it will change over time. But I think you get to see more of those disciplines than less as you move up and you start managing and leading.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. We've got some more great questions rolling in. Amruta, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. So earlier you spoke about how once you had to leave work early and then your boss kind of reminded you that, it was time. But what if you had been the boss in that situation? So, and then you realized it was your time to leave. would you have still left, or would you have stayed? Because like sometimes, like, I don't know how to phrase this properly, but
Yeah.
you want to like be in the trenches, I guess, with like the other people. So how would you like kind of?
Yeah, so that's why I think it's really important, to know, what are your beliefs and what are you willing to do and not willing to do, right? And yes, I would get up and leave, right? I mean, I don't drive on Sabbath. I don't use electronics on Sabbath, and so it's not a question even. I'll push it to the edge, right? I'll say, oh, I hope there's no traffic today, or I'll check the traffic. I try not to fly Friday afternoons. But I learned you can actually get from my house, from Logan Airport to my house without violating the Sabbath, because one time I couldn't help it and I landed after dark. But no, it's not a question really for me. It's somewhat, it's cut and dried. I won't eat certain things. I will not eat out certain places. I will not work. Sometimes there are 2-day Jewish holidays that come on Sunday. I'll go 3 days not checking my email. Now look, if lives are at risk, different story, right? And then it's not a question of religion. My religion would say, go ahead and do that work because you're saving someone's life. But that's not typically, what we do is important, but it's not that urgent. And so I would get up and leave.
All right, and just to follow up on this topic, Nathan Naidai, you had a similar or a related question?
Okay, so my question is, because I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and so I also believe in the Sabbath. And would you have to put in extra time on like Sunday or come in early other days to supplement?
Yeah. So I mean, I think even now I do that. And fortunately now you don't always have to come to work to put in extra time. You can do it from home. So but again, so the Jewish holidays, I don't know what it is for Seventh-day Adventists, there are 7 days most Septembers when I don't come to work between Jewish New Year's and Yom Kippur and Tabernacle and what sometimes you're lucky and those are Saturday and Sunday. Sometimes they're in the middle of the week. And so, I would put in, I'd work at night or I'd come in on Sundays before those, after those. At MITRE, we actually have something called Z time, which is you can say, I have a religious observance, and you have to formally make that time up over the next, I think it's 10 weeks, because we fill out time cards every day. And so, you put in for Z time and then you make it up later. Now again, other places, I think you just have to get the work done. As long as you're getting your work done, you could be more efficient. You could take shorter lunch break. There are lots of ways to do it. But no, I've got to get my work done. I've got to put the time in. But I've always been places that have been flexible and allowed me to make up for that in ways that worked for me.
All right, let's see. I'm gonna ask 2 people to state their questions, and then you can answer them because again, they're related, and given time, but they're still slightly different, so I think it's worthwhile to hear both. Let's see, Catherine Wang and Vibhusha Vadival. Would the Catherine first, and then Vibhusha, would the 2 of you ask your questions?
Hi, yeah. First of all, thank you for giving this seminar. I thought it was really valuable and you had a lot of pieces of advice that I think a lot of people here can take into their lives, including myself, and would help their careers. My question is, you spoke about times where you did the thing that you feared and that was really valuable to you. Were there times where you didn't pursue the things that you feared and that like affect some trajectory or activity that you were doing in your life?
Right, and Ellie, before you answer that, again, a similar question, but I think it's worth hearing the different angles on it. Vibhusha, do you? Apparently their internet isn't working, but basically the question is, do you have any advice in trying to push past the fear that you inevitably do feel for some of those things? So that's anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll answer both of them. So Catherine, I'd say that yeah, definitely. So I think I mentioned at the beginning, I've changed jobs quite a bit, certainly over the last 10 years. But early in my career, I didn't. I stayed, sort of doing the same kind of work this Air Force Red Team systems analysis for probably 8 to 10 years. And then stayed within that Air Force Red Team program even longer than that. And it was probably too long, because it's harder to move around and do different things as you move up in an organization. It's easy, when you first join a company, I'm not saying you should switch jobs in a year, but there are many opportunities out there, for entry level or, people who've been there 2 or 3 years, all different kinds of jobs are open. When you're leading, larger and larger groups, there are fewer and fewer of those positions, and it's harder to move around. And ideally, I think I would have moved around more early in my career, but I was afraid and didn't. Now, my career's turned out okay anyhow. I mean, I'm doing exciting things, and I've been able to, but I think I would have been better off if I hadn't been afraid of trying something new earlier. And then, in terms of how you push past that fear, I think, find partners who can do the things that you can't and that you're worried about. Again, I've been very lucky when I was in the engineering division office, again, I could not do the work that those people did. I had 2, what we called associate division heads, who were incredibly talented mechanical engineers, who also just incredibly thorough and disciplined. I am the kind of engineer who breaks the tool. I don't think things through all the time. These two, it was 2 men, actually, these 2 men, just so thorough. And so they were great partners for me. And I think I was a good partner for them, right? But they helped me get past that fear of not knowing what was going on and being able to do my best, relying on them to do some of the things I couldn't do. So hopefully that helps with those, yeah.
All right, so Ellie, I was thinking maybe 2 more sort of quick questions and answers, and then and then we'll get to the wrap-up part. Let's see, Eloise, Zhang, you had 2 different questions. Maybe you can choose one of them, whichever one you'd prefer to ask.
All right. What are some challenges of supervising people, and how did you deal with them?
Yeah. So, the good and the great people are easy to supervise, right? You just let them go. I'll say actually, and then there are people who just aren't the right people for the role. They may be great people, right? But this is just the right job for them. And that takes a lot of time, to ease them out, to help them find something else. But, it's really hard. But, I would say somewhat straightforward. The hardest part is actually the people who you think you can help and could get better at what they do. And it's going to take a lot of your time, but, you want to help people reach their potential. And so, I wish I had a good answer for you how to deal with that. I don't. I haven't figured that out. I'll say what's really hard is knowing who's in which of those categories. Who's the person, if you put a couple hours in, or you put some time in, or you work with them, you're going to get them over that hump and they're going to be a great performer. And who's the person who it's just not worth your time to help them because they're not going to get there. And look, it's not worth it for them, right? I mean, I think a lot of times, sometimes you'll let someone go and they will be so relieved because they knew they couldn't do this, right? And knowing where you are in that space, I think is really hard. And look, it is someone's, maybe not life, but livelihood you're talking about. And that's a serious thing, but at the same time, you have a duty to the organization. We have a duty to national security to have the right people to do it. And that's really hard. I dealt with it best I could. I've messed it up sometimes. I mean, very honestly, I've made mistakes, right? I wish there were things I could do differently on both sides. People who I kept trying to help and they never got there, and people who I didn't help and then went off somewhere and did great things. And yeah, I have no rules of thumb. You just got to do the best you can.
Thank you for answering.
Sure.
All right, great. And then very quickly, because I don't, but Stephen Wu, I think this is a nice final question. Do you want to just ask yours?
Sure. What do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, so I mean, I enjoy what I work, but I also like to, I read a lot. Every year my wife and I, she reads way more than I do, but we do a good year's reading challenge. My challenge this year, I think, is 60 books. So some I'll do on audio. It's not all on paper, but I read a lot. I also like to bike and run and swim. I was supposed to do my annual sprint triathlon last Sunday, but if you're in the Boston area, it was 95 degrees and they canceled it. But I love to get out in the morning, go for a bike ride, go for a run, or, get into the pool. I really enjoy that. That's sort of, lets me relax and, put work aside for a little bit. So that's sort of my almost hobby. I dabble in those things. I'm not a runner. I'm not a biker. I like doing those things. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Ellie. This was incredible. I'd like to invite up a few folks from the quantum software group. So Ben Dodge, Karen Shekian, Mohammed Zarais, if the three of you want to come up and make the presentation.
Okay, I'll start. So I'm a student in the quantum software course, which started out as an internal MITRE development and expanded.
Yep.
I have to say, after hearing your experience about work being at that USC summer program, it mirrors mine. I knew nothing about quantum computing or quantum software coming in, and now I'm completely in love with it. When I'm looking for colleges, the first thing I look for on my college list is how good is their quantum research, how developed is it?
Yep.
Wonderful experience. So thank you, as for being part of MITRE and helping promote that. Then on a personal note, I really appreciate your talk for kind of going beyond the resume points of I did this and I did this. It's like how did I do this? And more importantly, what beliefs and what factors and what knowledge did I have about working with people that let me achieve all those things? So very insightful talk. Thank you. Very much enjoyed this course.
Great.
I want to add on that I'm also part of the quantum software course, and it had similar impact on me where I found out that this is such a young and great field, and I want to be a part of it because it's going to be part of my generation's future. And I also wanted to, I appreciate all of the time that you've put into, all of this as well, right? Your talk was, as Ben said, very insightful. And it was great to see, I think, a different perspective slightly and different focus from like just the professional stuff.
Good.
Yeah, I'm also part of like the quantum software course, and like compared to the other seminars so far, I really greatly appreciated how this was like more so of like a life discussion to like kind of find what you like your true passion and like to make the right decisions in your career rather than just like, as Ben said, just like a resume readout. And I think it was important, a clear point that you like made clear was like to know your beliefs and like to kind of like know how far you're willing to go, because I think that's like a really important part of like everyone's career, especially here. Like you can't be a workaholic like all the time. Like you got to take breaks and stuff like that. And like also to like take risks. I feel like that was like something you really made clear. Like a lot of the people we've had so far, like they were like set clear on like what they want to do and they spent their whole career doing it, but like you showed us like taking risks is like really important, which I think is also a really important part of like young people's career. So I greatly appreciate your talk and like your work you do at MITRE. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe you guys all have a t-shirt.
I was good. I also have a t-shirt. I don't know if you could see it, but I wore my BeaverWorks t-shirt today. Thanks everyone for doing this.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
All right, Ellie, thank you so much. This was really fantastic. We all really appreciate it. So thank you.
Yep.
All right. Great. Thanks a lot, everyone. If people have follow-up questions, anything else they want to ask, get those to Joel or to Lisa. I'm happy to, talk to folks afterwards or take questions and get it back to them, whatever. Feel free to reach out. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
Ellie.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.